Welcome back to Long Delays Hobbies. Today I am going to be continuing one of my own long-delayed projects, which is the War Mûmak of Harad. I'm going to be painting up the Howdah today. This is going to be the second part of my painting the Mûmak series. I have previously painted up the base. You should be seeing a link to that video popping up right now. To paint the Howdah, I've started off by priming it black. The paint scheme that I'm going to use is not terribly complicated. There's really only 4 different base colors. So we're going to start off with some Xandri Dust Air to start with that wicker. The wicker is probably the most important part to get right. Don't forget the wicker bits on the bottom as well. Now the Xandri Dust Air does appear very bright, so you want to get that darkness back in by washing it with some Agrax Shade. Now I started off with a brush that was too small, so I increased my brush size so that this didn't take me ages. Even using a fairly large brush, it still took quite a while. I would just advise making sure you get the right size brush for the right job when washing a very large miniature like this. And here is the product after we've done our washing step. As you can see, it's already starting to almost look like a normal wicker. We're gonna now do some dry brushing over that with Carrick Stone. What I did was just go around the miniature going against the grain with Carrick Stone and try to avoid going with the grain, going perpendicular to the miniature. That way I made sure that Carrick Stone really popped and didn't find itself looking grainy. So I then went over that Carrick Stone with another lighter dry brush of Ushapti bone, and I'm following the same process where you just kind of naturally follow the grain lines. And here is the finished product after our dry brushing and wicker stage is done. You see that it is starting to look like wicker, as you might see out in the wild. To do the cloth, I used Mephiston Red, and I used the air paint variety simply because it meant that I had to go use my wet palette less. So I'm going to go straight out of my Mephiston Red air pot here and go all around the little bits of cloth on the miniature with Mephiston Red. This is going to take quite a bit of time because there is a lot of red on this miniature. And you see all the different bits of red are done. Don't forget that there's like a cushion on the bottom, so don't forget to get your brush down in there too. So I then painted all of the wooden supports and structures and so forth with dryad bark because they are intended to be made out of wood. Just go around the miniature and find all these little pieces of wood and paint them with dryad bark. There's a few I missed the first time that are actually hidden underneath, so just take your time in going around and picking those out. Now to paint the straps, I used Rakarth Flesh. I'm going to do some washing to tone down this very light color, make it look a little more natural, but that's Rakarth Flesh was the color I used to start out with. So now you can see what the miniature looks like with all of our base colors done. To wash the reds, I used Carroburg Crimson. So you got a lot of wash on one of the biggest brushes I had, and just made sure that the wash went into all of those recesses, because that is kind of what really makes the model pop, is getting those pieces of cloth dirty. So we can see what that Howdah looks like now that we've washed it with the Carroburg Crimson. We're now getting a nice depth of color. Now we're going to use some Agrex Earthshade to go over the cloth and wooden bits of the miniature. I really didn't want the Rakarth flesh bits to stay as lightly colored as they were, so I just went back over them with Agrex Earthshade. Now they kind of look like dirty cloth the way I want them to. And now we need to highlight our cloth. So we're going to do that with another layer of Mephiston Red. I initially actually tried to use Evil Sun Scarlet, which is the normal recommended highlight color for Mephiston Red, but I found that Evil Sun Scarlet was too bright. I went back over it instead with Mephiston Red, and I found that it looked a lot better as a highlight. There's a lot of creases in this model, so just go and pick them out with Mephiston Red, as well as the edges and folds and so forth. One of the good things about this miniature is you can go in depth as you would like, and you can also decide where you want to stop, and the model does a lot of the work for you. If you want to stop even after you've done the washing, the model still looks pretty good. And you can see here's what the miniature looks like after we've completed all of our Mephiston Red highlights. So now we're going to highlight the supports with Gorthor Brown. So this was a bit of a tricky part because there are pieces to highlight on the wooden struts. They might be a bit difficult to make out, but there are some little pieces of wood extension that you can highlight, little pieces of bark and so forth that really go a long way in making the model stand out. You do have to use a small brush to get those highlights, and it is very difficult to get your brush in there too, because you have to go inside of the model to actually get them highlighted. Just take your time during this part. If you make any mistakes, just go back and clean them up. So here's what the miniature looks like once the Gorthor Brown highlights are completed. For the last step, I wanted to bring a little bit of brightness back into the straps, so I just highlighted them back up with Rakarth Flesh. I didn't want them to look like they were totally dingy. I also highlighted the little tiny bits of stitching that were on that cushion in the middle of the Howdah to make those pop just a bit. And so here is our completed Howdah. So not a terribly complex or in-depth color pattern, really just reds and browns. It is a lot of paint to apply to a single miniature. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for coming along with me on my journey on painting this Mûmak. It's really helping me get my motivation for painting this beast of a model. If you have any comments or questions on how I painted it, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to have a great day.